Yes, indeed, ladies and gentlemen, Mrs. Bridges, the wife of
Hey Jude, don't make it.
Sorry, sorry for
happens
that.
in I don't know what it is, folks, but today it happened at the commercial radio station too, and poor Steve was saying, "What's going on here?" So we're surrounded by assassins, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Irv
Well,
Homer.
I know what happened here. It's because I forgot to eliminate the next song in the playlist.
Well, they know what happened there too, and it still happened anyway. Anyway, welcome to the Irv Homer Show, ladies and gentlemen. It's Monday night, 8 o'clock. It's April the 13th, 2009. And we do this thing for laughs. We make no money out of it, unfortunately. But listen, what can I say? We enjoy talking to you folks out there. Or you getting on the chat room. And you can have a question or comment on what is happening after my comments and something a little different tonight on the Irv Homer Show. Our telephone number, if you care to join us, is 215 253 8877. 215 253 8877. And you must turn your computer down when you call in because we get a feedback and it destroys the credibility of the conversation. The couple comments that I want to make, and then I want to introduce something that may be a little different tonight. And we're going to answer one particular email tonight in reference to the New World Order and explain to you what my position is on the New World Order. Once again, if you want to email me, my email address, once again, ladies and gentlemen, is evilerv at irvhomer.com. Evilerv at irvhomer.com. We will answer your emails if you can't get through on the chat room or on the telephone. So if you email me at evilerv at irvhomer.com with a question or comment that you would like answered or read on the air, please feel free to do so. I suggest you check my website, www.irvhomer.com. That's www.irvhomer.com. And this program is brought to you by Ron Tech, the RGH Computer Services. And we invite you to check out their prices compared to other prices. And it's amazing what you find out there in the arena of charging for computer service. The astronaut, it's like if you've been a boat owner, you know that marinas go crazy when they charge you to repair a boat. And in the beginning, the first year I owned a boat, I thought, what is this? This is crazy. Until you shopped around. There were good marinas around, ladies and gentlemen, south of the Chesapeake and Delaware Canal, where I kept my boats. And it took time to learn. So I would suggest you shop around and then contact RGH Computer Services at 215 322 8685 and check them out. Ron's Tech Show is 6:30 on Wednesday nights from 6:30 to 7:30 to answer your questions about your computer, security, hacking, all the things you want to know about computers but were afraid to ask. And once again, for you novices, Ron's Tech will tell you the type of computer to get if you're just getting into it, the type of laptop computer you should get. Computers are like automobiles or boats, more like boats or airplanes. And if you've ever bought a boat or an airplane, you know you can buy the wrong boat for the wrong reason at the wrong time, and you can buy the wrong airplane for the wrong reason at the wrong time, and you could also buy the wrong computer at the wrong time for the wrong reason. Before we go any further, we have someone on our telephone line at 215 253 8877, and we welcome them to the Irv Homer Show. Good evening.
Good evening, Irv. This is Rick from Percy's. Always a pleasure.
How are you,
Two
Rick?
things. I'm doing great, Irv. Love your show, and I'm an old loyal fan for many years, so just always mention that. Two things. I was doing some work today at my office on the Fair Credit Reporting Act, and I noticed in the report that you're supposed to, or the notice you're supposed to give people if you check their credit, it refers to banks in the Federal Reserve System. And I went, oh, I know we have the Federal Reserve that we buy our money from, or that we have to, but when was the Federal Reserve System and banks that are in that, are they being bailed out? I mean, this is so wacky. Can you comment, or does the question make sense? Or
Yeah. There are two banks in America that are not members of the Federal Reserve System. They were grandfathered in when the Banking Act of 1933 became a reality. They refused to participate, which means those two banks' reserve is more than adequate to cover their depositors' deposits and their investments. So their reserve is 100% guaranteed by the printed reserve and the investments that these banks have. Now, there are only two of them. I think one is in the state of Nevada. I think one is in Oklahoma. They're also very selective as to who they will take as a depositor or as a client. They've been in business since 1913 and have never failed even during the Depression. So it is a caveat to put in there that only if you are on deposit with a Federal Reserve Bank.
Well, Irv, if that's the case, I'm sorry. If that's the case, are these banks in the Federal Reserve System? Are those banks that were also non-regulated? What the hell is the Federal Reserve doing if they've got banks in their system that are failing, collapsing?
They don't have any. Well, that's the fraud of the Federal Reserve System and the Federal Deposit Insurance Company. What the government said is we'll sell the means of manufacturing currency to a private company, but in return we will give people guarantees that we will guarantee this private bank for the depositors of the American citizens so that they won't realize that the United States government doesn't back the currency, that this Federal Reserve System prints and distributes the currency, but the government guarantees it.
So when they talk about the Fed window, where they borrow money, I mean, that's also the Federal Reserve. I mean, we got this system so screwed up, and they're so ingrained in our whole economic system. I get more of what you mean by we've turned over our money system to this unknown private entity.
Well, let me explain. Yeah.
No, I'm sorry, Eric. You got my point.
Let me explain it this way, Rick. If you go to borrow money, you need a co-signer or someone to endorse the loan, right?
Right.
Okay. Well, the Federal Reserve is the lending agency, and the United States is the co-signer of the debt. And it's that simple.
Okay.
We co-sign whatever the Federal Reserve System does and who they loan money to. Now, the thing that's amazing, the Federal Reserve System is not required to divulge their books and records for a period of 5 years. So any information that you would get from the Federal Reserve System today under the Privacy Act or the Right of Disclosure Act would be 5 years old.
I mean, this is a freaking outrage. I'm sorry.
Well, it is a friggin' outrage because dummy America doesn't know it. They don't realize the Fed is a private bank. I've explained it for 35 years on radio and television, and people just slough it off and think it's a joke. Well, when they lose their homes and they now guarantee, which makes me extremely nervous, that the government now is underwriting a bank for $250,000 of bad debt. This is insanity.
Yeah. Well, one last thing, and I'm going to get off. Did you know Harry Callis, and did you ever work with him? And I didn't want to get off the subject. I just thought if you would comment on that at some point tonight, I'd love to hear that.
Well, there are two people in sports, in the broadcasting industry, that are just unbelievable for the popularity and the honor they deserve. One is Harry Callis, and the other is Bill Camel. Now, even though Harry Callis replaced Bill Camel, as the voice of the Phillies, they still had the utmost respect for them. I only, in my entire broadcast career, met Harry Callis once. That was a Broadcast Pioneers Award dinner. He is a gentleman. He did not let his popularity and the fact that he was in the Baseball Hall of Fame. He was interested in one thing, being a real nice guy. And I think Harry Callis would have been that type of guy had he never been in the Baseball Hall of Fame. He was just a nice man who are hard to find in the broadcast industry today.
Yeah, I thought you'd know him, Irv. I appreciate it. And I'll let other people, let you take the other messages. But great show. I listen every night.
Thanks, Rick. And I hope I explained that Federal Reserve System to you, that we endorse the loans of the Fed. That's what we do.
No, you helped me, Irv, and I try to read up on it too. I don't just call you, but it's very enlightening what you said. You don't learn this stuff from other people. You really don't.
Well, you don't learn You don't learn it because they don't consider it to be, people consider, well, that's the law and that's the way we work and that's it. But one of the things that I'm proud of now, that no matter where I turn, I constantly hear the phrase that I used years ago. If you want to know the root of the problem, follow the money trail.
Absolutely.
Thanks for calling, Rick.
Thanks.
Thanks so much
Bye-bye.
for your kind words. I'm Irv Homer. Our telephone number, 215-253-8877. We will accept lies and deceit, ladies and gentlemen, before we'll accept the truth. And the lie of our currency is I don't know how, I really don't know how anyone in true conscience can not question the guarantee of $250,000 per deposit, which means that the entire banking industry, even though it is getting the stimulus package and being bailed out, in addition to that, the government is saying, look, we'll also guarantee any bad loans up to $250,000 per depositor. It's insanity. Would you sign a note to your brother for $250,000 knowing that he's only got 2% reserve to pay you back? Well, the United States endorses the loan that the Federal Reserve loans to them. They borrow the money and then endorse it. Half of the mafia must be turning over in their grave because they couldn't get away with that. I'm Irv Homer. Let me do something. It may take a few moments of your time, and I hope you enjoy it, as I did today on my commercial station. You know, Coca-Cola once said that they're the pause that refreshes. And it kind of went over pretty big. People who write commercials usually write stuff, that sticks. Like double mint chewing gum, double your flavor, double your fun, get yourself two broads instead of just one. I mean, they all come up with all these great songs. And so in light of the fact that even though the bloviators are not happy and the anti-Obama people are not happy, the commander-in-chief of the United States military, whether you like it or not, is a man by the name of President Barack Hussein Obama. And under his watch, Captain Bridges was saved from the 3 pirates in this standoff that took place right out of the Gulf of Aden in the Indian Ocean. And whether you want to or not, as Harry Truman said, the buck stops here. He was the commander-in-chief. He is the commander-in-chief of our military. And I've heard all condemnation. Well, it was the French that did it, and it was the fact that the commanders did it, and blah, blah, blah. He's the commander-in-chief of that warship that was off the coast, and it was towing the. I just get frustrated when I heard what I heard today. If it were President Bush that had been successful in this, I would have given it the same acclaim. But give the commander-in-chief his due. That captain is safe, the ship is safe, and it ended the way we wanted it to end. Now, President Barack Obama was criticized for going around the world having rapprochement with the E20 and of all of our so-called friends around the world. In fact, today, before I come on the air, he's opening up the means of communication and visitation to the island of Cuba. The Cuban American Association, with the exception of a few right-wing Cubans, are ecstatic about it. Whether it works or not, I think it will work. I don't think we have any fear of Cuba. I also feel that if we have a rapprochement with Cuba, terrorists won't be so likely to form terrorist cells in the island. With our presence there, they may be a little reluctant. With cooperation from the Cuban government, if we can establish a rapprochement with them, they'll cooperate with us. So there's been a dramatic change in this commander-in-chief. So the pause that refreshes is something I think that Gordon Sinclair in 1973 recorded. Gordon Sinclair was an American. So let's pause, ladies and gentlemen, for a few moments and listen to what Gordon Sinclair had to say in 1973, and maybe it'll give us a little spurt of patriotism.
The United States dollar took another pounding on German, French, and British exchanges this morning, hitting the lowest point ever known in West Germany. It has declined there by 41% since 1971, and this Canadian thinks it's time to speak up for the Americans as the most generous and possibly the least appreciated people in all the earth. As long as 60 years ago, when I first started to read newspapers, I read of floods on the Yellow River and the Yangtze. Who rushed in with men and money to help? The Americans did. They have helped control floods on the Nile, the Amazon, the Ganges, and the Niger. Today, the rich bottomland of the Mississippi is underwater, and no foreign land has sent a dollar to help. Germany, Japan, and to a lesser extent, Britain and Italy were lifted out of the debris of war by the Americans, who poured in billions of dollars and forgave other billions in debts. None of those countries is today paying even the interest on its remaining debts to the United States. When the franc was in danger of collapsing in 1956, it was the Americans who propped it up, and their reward was to be insulted and swindled on the streets of Paris. I was there. I saw it. When distant cities are hit by earthquake, it is the United States that hurries in to help. Managua, Nicaragua is one of the most recent examples. So far this spring, 59 American communities have been flattened by tornadoes. Nobody has helped. The Marshall Plan, the Truman Policy, all pumped billions upon billions of dollars into discouraged countries. Now newspapers in those countries are writing about the decadent warmongering Americans. I'd like to see just one of those countries that is gloating over the erosion of the United States dollar build its own airplanes. Come on, let's hear it. Does any other country in the world have a plane to equal the Boeing Jumbo Jet, the Lockheed TriStar, or the Douglas 10? If so, why don't they fly them? Why do all international lines except Russia fly American planes? Why does no other land on Earth even consider putting a man or woman on the moon? You talk about Japanese technocracy and you get radios. You talk about German technocracy and you get automobiles. You talk about American technocracy and you will find men on the moon, not once, but several times, and safely home again. You talk about scandals and the Americans put theirs right in the store window for everybody to look at. Even the draft dodgers are not pursued and hounded. They are here on our streets, most of them, unless they are breaking Canadian laws, are getting American dollars from Ma and Pa at home to spend here. When the Americans get out of this bind, as they will, who could blame them if they said, the hell with the rest of the world? Let someone else buy the Israel bonds. Let someone else build or repair foreign dams or design foreign buildings that won't shake apart in earthquakes. When the railways of France, Germany, and India were breaking down through age, it was the Americans who rebuilt them. When the Pennsylvania Railroad and the New York Central went broke, nobody loaned them an old caboose. Both are still broke. I can name you 5,000 times when the Americans raced to the help of other people in trouble. Can you name me even one time when someone else raced to the Americans in trouble? I don't think there was outside help even during the San Francisco earthquake. Our neighbors have faced it alone, and I'm one Canadian who's damned tired of hearing them kicked around. They will come out of this thing with their flag high, and when they do, they are entitled to thumb their nose at the lands that are gloating over their present troubles. I hope Canada is not one of these, but there are many smug, self-righteous Canadians. And finally, the American Red Cross was told at its 48th annual meeting in New Orleans that it was broke. This year's disasters have taken it all, and nobody, but nobody, has helped.
Leave it go, leave it go. Leave it go.
Oh.
Another 3 minutes. one. That's it. See, there's 5 stanzas to it, and they play all 5. You can all sing now. I think that's the pause that refreshes, ladies and gentlemen, whether you're a conservative, a liberal, a Democrat, Republican, regardless of what country of origin you're from. I think that it's time to reflect that we've drifted away from the principles of America and to become a world power and part of the world. The world is shrinking and we are a part of it. But I think it gave a little inspiration to those of us who want an injection of patriotic, what do they give you when you have a patriotic, what word am I looking for? An injection, I suppose, intravenous, adrenaline, something to stimulate our pride in being American and pride of this president who settled this problem with the pirates very successfully. We all are immigrants in this country, 1 generation, 2 generations, 3 generations. I still see none of us want to go back to the homeland. So I hope you appreciate what I did just now. We'll go to the chat room because our listener or viewer here says the bloviators are making a big deal about Obama bowing to the Saudi king and not bowing to the Queen of England. Have you seen this, and do you have any comments or thoughts on this? I agree Obama handled the pirates very well, and we come off looking like a patient, smart country, not going like gangbusters. I couldn't agree with you more. We had a president prior to this who went to the United Nations and got a consensus and blah, 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 and then we decided to go into and warned Obama. President Obama said, look, we got a problem here. He was briefed. They went to the United Nations. Did you notice there were no resolutions passed, ladies and gentlemen, in the United Nations giving the United States the authority to kill the pirates? President Bush, before he went into Iraq, went to the United Nations, had 15 resolutions passed, made all kind of promises, had to get a coalition of the willing. So 2 countries sent us 100 soldiers, another one sent us 30 soldiers. Barack Obama went to the United Nations, but the final decision was his to give the commanders and the snipers, take them out. A little different between the 2 presidents. But the bloviators aren't going to point that out. As far as the king or the queen being bowed to by President Barack Obama and his bowing to Saudi Arabia, although the queen is the royal head of the Church of England, it is not part of the custom or the religion of the Church of England to bow to the Queen. It is done as a courtesy, not as a religious requirement. The Saudi Arabian king, you must remember that there is no separation between the religion of Islam in Saudi Arabia and the government. Not to bow to King of Saudi Arabia would be not offense to Saudi Arabia and the king, but to the religion of Islam. And there is a fine difference between the two. And unless you realize how delicate international negotiations are, the bloviators will not take the time to explain to you, but they will scream and yell about the president not bowing to the Queen of England and the fact that Michelle Obama put her arm around the Queen. It is not an insult if you don't bow to the Queen of England. It is not an insult if you put your arm around the Queen. But it is an insult to the leader of an Islamic country, one in which has the largest terrorist organization in the Middle East, that is the Wahhabi sect of Islam that rules Saudi Arabia and that the entire Saudi kingdom lives in fear of. President Barack Obama knew that. I'm aware of the intricacies of dealing with international diplomacy from having interviewed a woman whose father and her were chiefs of state for White House dinners, explaining to me what it is like to have a dinner in the White House for 10 countries at the same time. You must be careful where you put the knife, where you put the fork, where you put the napkin, who you sit next to someone, whether or not the napkin is a particular color is offensive to some nations. All of these things, ladies and gentlemen, we do not have to deal with an international protocol. Okay? So this is the ignorance and the stupidity of the bloviators, who are really starting to lose their audiences, because even the stupidest eggheads, ditto heads, are now realizing they're being suckered by these guys. I see the demise of that type of talk radio. Irv, didn't Bush bow to the Saudis? In fact, I think he kissed them. Yes, he did kiss them. They walked arm in arm in the Rose Garden into the White House. The bloviators never made any statements about that. The bloviators never made any statement about the fact that President Bush, when he visited the Pope, who disagreed with President Bush on many things, kissed and knelt to the Pope and kissed his ring. Now, I would much rather bow to the king than kiss anybody's ring. But the bloviators got their thing, and they've got their ignorant audience. And until things change where people question things and ask questions and challenge these people that have managed to captivate the ignorant and the lame, mentally lame, nothing's going to change. But they're learning, and it may take about 15, 20 years. I want to answer this email, and if you have any questions, please feel free to do so. Let me also, before I go into this, let me mention to you something that has to be cleared up. When I tell you that I'm aware of the difference between capitalism, socialism, communism, libertarianism, the fact that I know about them does not mean that I endorse any of them. Because there is no pure theory of economics. There is no pure theory of religion, which is faith. There is no pure theory of anything. And so I agree that when you talk about isms, you have to be very careful and explain them properly. Let's go to the website. There's an interesting chart here. Irv, you've always hated George Bush. Your last show on WWDB, Let's Bash Bush. Yes, it probably was. Because I don't like being lied to. President Bush proved himself to be a liar. Vice President Cheney agreed to be a liar. I called Wilson Goode, the mayor of Philadelphia, on my program a liar. Did I hate George Bush personally? No. But I hated what he was doing and the fact that he was getting away with it. At the time of 9/11, you remember what President Bush was doing? He was reading bedtime stories to kids in a classroom and couldn't conceive for 7 minutes what was happening when the World Trade Center blew up. Let Barack Obama do something stupid, as George Bush did, and lie to me like Bush did, and I will nail him to the cross. The 4,000 dead, a direct result of George Bush and his administration, you mourn for them, my dear friend. You mourn for them. Those men died in vain. We'll never get out of Iraq. We'll never get out of Afghanistan. We'll never get out of Pakistan. Thank you to George Bush. Karl Rove, the second biggest liar next to Bush, and Vice President Cheney, who was really the President of the United States. How many times did George Bush say, we're not in this for regime change? But he changed the regime in Iraq, didn't he? Did not his father lie? And he agreed to it? When April Glaspie, who was the secretary or the counsel to Saddam Hussein, asked Saddam Hussein if he was going to go into Kuwait, he said, if they don't stop drilling on an angle, I will. And April Glaspie, representing America and the Bush administration, said, well, that's a personal matter. We can't get involved in it. And isn't it amazing that not one of the bloviators, isn't it amazing that Hannity, Limbaugh, Gallagher, even the liberal media, never brought the ambassador to Iraq on the air as a guest to explain why she told Saddam Hussein it was all right to invade Kuwait? And if you're as dumb as they are, not wanting to know, that's on you, pal. You send your sons and your grandsons to fight wars that liars start. Doesn't it bother? And it's part of my book called Makes No Difference. Nobody gives a damn. Desert Storm under George Bush's father was started because Saddam Hussein allegedly invaded Kuwait. The real reason we went into Iraq was because Iraq would not sign up with the oil production economic corporation OPEC. He said, it's my oil, I'll sell it whatever price I want. That wasn't good enough for the Bush family and the seven sisters of the oil industry. So they had to figure out a way to pay back Saddam Hussein because he wouldn't play ball with the Bush oil fortune and the Dick Cheney oil fortune. You didn't know that, did you, my dear friend? And you don't give a damn to know it. Because you're so positive that Irv Homer bashed George Bush. Well, any president that puts my sons or grandsons or your son or grandson at risk to be killed in a no damn win war, I'll bash the living shit out of him, including you. And as I said, my dear friend, let this guy get us involved in a war that has no merit, and I'll bash him. Even the bloviators today. Where's April? You don't even know who the hell April Glaspie is, do you? And you don't give a rat's ass. Of course, you're so blinded by this Bush administration that we had 8 years of. Bring it on. Mr. Tough Guy George Bush, bring it on. He's a fighter pilot. Why don't he get his ass over there and start flying missions? Where is the tough guy now? Sucking a beer on his ranch in Texas. Where's Mr. Tough Guy? Thank you, Mr. Bush, for inviting Al-Qaeda to bring it on. And they did. Oh, the mission accomplished sign. That was a mistake. Did you know? And I really don't mean to be vicious to the person who put this on because they're absolutely right. I did bash the hell out of Bush, and I will continue to do so till the day I die because of his stupidity. The first time we've ever been involved in a war for 8 years, and this idiot lowers taxes? This idiot couldn't go back in history and realize that we could sell American bonds to the American people to finance this war if it was so just and so righteous? This idiot who said we don't want the people to see the dead coming back to Dover Air Force Base because they may get pissed off, so we'll keep it a secret. But over 40,000 bodies went through Dover Air Force Base during the Vietnam War, and the liberal Democrat Lyndon Johnson didn't stop it, or John F. Kennedy didn't stop it, or Bill Clinton didn't stop it. Barack Obama said, let's open up and let the people see the honored dead from Iraq and Afghanistan. What the hell were you hiding, George Bush? The dead that you caused? I'll bash the hell out of him now that he's not in office and be proud of it. You want to be a tough guy, you better back it up with something. Ronald Reagan was a tough guy. He had 237 Marines killed because he wouldn't let them have ammunition in their rifles, and still morons like you are praising Ronald Reagan. A man who double-crossed the air traffic controllers by promising them that he would get elected to president, he would revise and increase the allotment to the air traffic controllers, hire more air traffic controllers, and update the air traffic controllers system. And so the air traffic controllers voted for Ronald Reagan. Then he said, screw you, I'm not going to do it. He fired them all. That's your Ronald Reagan. That's your right-wing conservative Republican liars. You people boggle my mind. You thought I was going to deny the fact that I bashed Bush. You're right, my friend. I'll bash the living crap out of any president. And I'll bash idiots like you who don't realize that Saddam Hussein was our ally for 8 years against Iran. I'll bet you didn't even know that, you dipshit. Pardon my language, ladies and gentlemen. And the gas that Saddam Hussein used to kill his own people was sold to Iraq from a company in New Jersey. We were Saddam Hussein's ally. Why did we double-cross him? What did he do using the chemical warfare that we sold him against his own people while he was fighting Iran for us? Then we double-crossed him. The blatant ignorance of the American people absolutely boggles my mind. But I do thank you, sir, for reminding me that I do hate George Bush. Not him personally. Strictly business. Probably have a beer with the guy. Oh, I forgot he's an alcohol. He belongs to AA. He don't drink anymore. I still drink. See, I know how to drink. Even he didn't know how to drink. That's why he was a drunk. Got a ticket for drunk driving. Never got one myself. I'm twice as old as he is. So thank you for reminding me, because I was getting a little tempered toward the past president. But you renewed my disgust for him. And for that, I thank you. Our chat room is open, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to go into a little bit about this new world order that many people are confused about. And this is to Cheryl of Princeton. And I know, Cheryl, that you can't listen to the program because of business commitments. The New World Order was conceived I would say, roughly when Ed Griffin discovered, I believe it was around 1913, 1914, when the international bankers, them evil people, that you always hear about, realized that the world was getting smaller. And we had a thing called currency exchange. Now, let me make it as simple as possible what the New World Order is all about and why it should be looked at very carefully. Because for every thing, ladies and gentlemen, there's a plus side and a minus side. And you have to look carefully at both sides. And the side is that as the world was getting smaller, the international banks, the IMF, etc., said, let's look at the United States when the United States was first formed with the 13 original colonies. And so they realized of the 13 colonies, 13 of them had different currencies. Well, how could we have a medium of exchange between 13 colonies if they all had a different money? Could these colonies ever unite politically, financially, religiously, morally, economically, by having 13 different currencies? So they came up with a thing called the barter system, which each person established what the value of their goods and services was, and it's more or less an exchange system, a barter system. This is what I want for my roof. This is how much you'll get for the lumber. This is how much you'll get for the chickens. This is how much you get for the eggs. Finally decided, we better come up with something called a unilateral currency, something that we can exchange among ourselves. And now we have 50 states. And suppose when you went from New Jersey to Pennsylvania, you had a different currency. And then you went from Pennsylvania to New York, and you had a different currency. You went from New York to Connecticut, you had a different currency. You went from Connecticut to Vermont, you had a different currency. You go crazy. Well, that's what the international banking industry company said. Look, this is crazy. We can't go from Spain to Germany to Portugal to Italy to Russia to Bulgaria to Romania and have different currencies. We'll never get anything done. You got natural resources, you got a natural resource. You want Uganda's got chrome ore. We got this, blah, 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 blah. And so they said, we have to establish international currency, a rate of exchange. And so they came up with the SDRs, the special drawing rights, in which they established what the medium of exchange was, and then you drew the difference out. If something was worth 30 cents and you were having $1, you could draw 70 cents worth on special drawing rights to equalize the currency exchange. That got too difficult because as the world got smaller and smaller and more business extended between the countries, that became obsolete. Well, when you start dealing with money and equalizing and stabilizing money, you have to start stabilizing politics. Well, from politics, it went into religion. From religion, it went into law. From law, it goes into other areas. So the evolution of the original concept of standardization of money around the world evolved into a coalition of giving up certain rights of your country. The concept of international monetary exchange is understandable when you deal on the international market. When you have companies that are multinational, that means companies that have offices in America, offices in England, offices in Germany, offices in Russia, offices in Romania. So it makes sense to have an established currency. Now, on the downside, how much of your sovereignty are you going to give up? How much of your fundamental religious belief, if you believe in an Orthodox religion, are you willing to give up? How much of your social life are you willing to give up? How much of your recreation life are you willing to give up? How much of your zoning rights are you willing to give up? Well, these guys who have no sovereign borders to worry about, because money, believe it or not, has no sovereignty and no loyalty. If you deal in international exchange, mark this in your head. Money and power has no borders. It has no loyalty. It has no religion. It has no moral code. It has nothing. Except medium of exchange. What can I get for it, and what's the best deal? That is the fear of the New World Order. There are many people who are fundamentalist New World Order advocates who are saying we're willing to give up a certain amount of freedom for a certain amount of financial stability in the world market. We're willing to give up, compromise certain bit of our religion to be part of the world market. And those people are behind the scenes working diligently at the UN and the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, Council of Foreign Relations, Trilateral Commission, the Bilderbergs, the whole group of those underground folks. And they mean it with good intent. Because you know the law of unintended consequences is that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And these people's intentions basically are good. But it'll never work. But it is a fear that the fear mongers can make money on. In fact, this book here that I have, which has a list of about 110 books, I'd say 30 of them are fear of the New World Order. Now, in another question that my dear Cheryl from Princeton sent me, she's concerned about concentration camps that the government is building. And who's building them? The Federal Emergency Management Agency. The Japanese Americans, after World War II, went to what is known as relocation centers. Even though they were American citizens and never proven guilty of any subversion, but because they were Japanese Americans, they were relocated to relocation centers. They lost their possessions, lost their money, lost their homes, lost their cars, lost their treasures, and were placed in relocation centers. Under the governor of California, Earl Warren, who ended up being a Supreme Court judge, but became a liberal. So the former liberal Earl Warren was the conservative governor of California who relocated the Japanese out of California into relocation centers. I have told you people years and years and years and years that no dramatic change ever occurred in America unless the people took to the street. Oh, you don't believe it? Well, talk to idiots like Ann Coulter and other of her ilk and ask them how benevolent our government was to give women the right to vote. this nitwit, along with the Phyllis Schlafly's, Laura Ingram's, and others of her ilk, don't realize that us men, when we were in power, didn't want you to vote, you crazy bimbo Ann Coulter. You got the right to vote, Ann Coulter, and Laura Ingraham, and you other right-wing bimbos that need an orgasm. When your sisters and your grandmother took to the streets of America under Susan B. Anthony and practically rioted, that's when you got the right to vote. Wasn't your conservative brothers in Washington that gave you the right to vote? When you conservatives who are against unions are now making a halfway decent living, it's when the coal miners got tired of dying in the coal mines that John L. Lewis came and said they're not going down in the mines anymore until they make a living wage. When blacks wanted equal rights, we didn't give it to them. We put dogs on them and fire hoses on them. While they were fighting for freedom in World War II, their fathers were not allowed to ride on a trolley car in Philadelphia. So now the bloviators, the windbag bastards on syndicator, are having a tea party 2 days from now in Atlanta, and they're going to have these tea parties. Them yellow-bellied bastards are not sacrificing one bit to stir up their audience to have a tea party. This administration, the tax code, changes in government don't change until the people take to the streets. Sean Hannity, you fake, phony fraud, you. And Limbaugh and the rest of your ilk and your followers who are as crazy as you are. Oh, you'll be symbolic and have tea bags, and you'll see it on the news. We got our tea bags. We're against the Obama administration. We're against taxes. Wah, 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 wah. And each one of them yellow-bellied bastards, I guarantee you, have already filed their returns. They're not going to jeopardize their rich and wealthy asses for you, you poor creep who are trying to make your car payments and your car leases and your mortgages and your summer home and your condominium fees. They're laughing at you because they're stirring the pot, but not placing themselves at risk one bit. Limbaugh, in fact, that fat OxyContin creep, tells his poor listeners in New York who can't leave the taxation of New York that he's not going to do business in New York anymore because they audited him for the last 10 years. So he is not doing any business in New York anymore. While some poor sucker listener of his is applauding this idiot, but he can't afford to move out of New York, so he's paying taxes while he's applauding Limbaugh, who's not going to pay the taxes, and this schmuck is applauding Limbaugh. He's a great American. I don't believe what I hear, ladies and gentlemen. I'm glad to see that my words are coming back on my chat room. We need to manufacture in the U.S. again and drill for our own oil. Lower the largest corp tax in the world and bring back 20% depletion allowance. This is how you fix the problem. Well, I'm so glad you've listened to me in the past so you can put it on my chat room and read it back to myself. We don't have to drill for oil. We've capped the wells. All we got to do is uncap them. We don't have to drill for natural gas in America. Just uncap the natural gas wells. And it's not 20% deletion allowance. It's a 23.5% depletion allowance. Yes, we need industry back in America to manufacture our own television sets, our own washing machines, our own dryers, our own toasters, our own mix masters, our own blenders. But as long as Boobus America buys stuff from Walmart that's made in China, how are you going to get to these knuckleheads, my dear friend? And how are you going to take the Bushes and the Cheneys and the Rockefellers and the Stotesburys and those people that are multi-billionaires in this country that have stock in Arab oil to introduce the 23.5% depletion allowance again if you own an oil well in America? Because as long as the boobus Americans are as dumb and as stupid as they are, forget about it. Forget about it, because Limbaugh and those people who are leading the people as the pressure. See, when you get a pressure pot, they put a pressure cooker on it. That's to let the hot steam out, let the hot air out. Well, that's what these syndicated guys do. They're having a tea party to let the steam out so that the pressure pot don't blow up. That's next time you hear Limbaugh, hear these guys talking about tax reform and about April 15th and the Tea Party. Just think of your teapot shooting hot air and steam out of the top, because that's exactly what they're doing. They're shooting the steam out so the pot don't blow up, because they know that nothing changes in America until the people take to the streets. That's why there's no draft in this Iraq-Afghan war, because the suckers that volunteered are going back 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. But let there be a draft, and your kid would be rioting on the damn college campuses, and you know it. I enjoy doing this program, but I enjoy doing the program on commercial radio because I get paid for it. But I enjoy doing this because maybe, and this last call on the chat room got to me, because now you're starting to hear what I'm saying. Give the oil companies the 23.5% depletion allowance and open up those wells. Give the natural gas companies 23.5% depletion allowance, they'll open up the gas wells. Stop buying foreign goods. Read the label. If it says made in China, don't buy it. If it says made in Bangladesh, don't buy it. If it says made in Europe and it's a shirt, don't buy the damn things. If you don't buy them, they won't make them. They'll make them here. I believe that's too much common sense for the average person. I'm Irv Homer. We'll see you Wednesday. Don't forget, the Ron Tech Show, 6:30 p.m., right here on the Irv Homer chat room, the Irv Homer telephone. Your questions about anything in computers, technical questions. There's no such thing as a dumb question, folks. If you feel that you want a question answered by Ron and his tech show, please feel free to tune in. Give him a call starting at 6:30 p.m. on Wednesday from 6:30 to 7:30. I will see you on Wednesday. Yes, dear listeners, I don't hate George Bush. I despise him. I'll see you.